There are moments in the quiet of the morning when heaven feels closer than breath, and today is one of those moments. Before anything rises to meet you, before decisions, responsibilities, or burdens stretch out across the hours ahead, there is a gentle voice inviting you to slow down and enter a sacred space. Right now, in this very moment, God is whispering to your heart, calling you into a stillness that reorders everything, a stillness that reminds your soul that before you begin your day, you belong to Him. It is here, in this soft morning light, that obedience begins. Not in dramatic gestures, but in the quiet willingness to listen, to open your heart, and to surrender to the one who loves you more deeply than you can comprehend. As we start our day, we ask God for the grace to receive His will with obedience, not the kind that is cold or forced, but the kind that flows from trust that His plans lead us toward life, peace, and holiness. Obedience is not about losing your freedom. It is about discovering your true identity. When your heart opens to God's voice, it opens to the path that was written for you since the beginning of time. And even when surrender feels difficult, even when you are asked to release what you hope to control, there is a strength that rises from the simple act of saying, "Lord, I want what you want for me." In today's gospel reflection from Matthew, Jesus reminds His listeners that belonging to the family of God is not determined by bloodline or heritage, but by the heart that listens and responds. When He extends His hand toward His disciples and calls them His mother and His brothers, He is teaching something powerful and beautifully simple. Those who hear and obey the Father's will are drawn into His closest circle. This is not a distant or symbolic family. This is real belonging, a deep intimacy offered to anyone willing to follow the whisper of God. You are not far from Him. When you choose faithfulness in small moments, when you act with kindness, when you choose humility, when you forgive, when you trust, these are the steps that bring you deeper into Christ's embrace. And today, as we gather in prayer, we are reminded of Mary, whose life shines as a perfect example of obedience rooted in love. On this feast of her presentation, we recall how she was dedicated to God from her earliest childhood, raised in a heart of devotion, formed in truth, and shaped to say yes with a courage that changed the world. Her obedience was never cold duty. It was the overflow of a heart fully surrendered to God's love. She teaches us that holiness is not achieved through extraordinary moments, but through daily faithfulness, quiet listening, and the desire to belong entirely to God. When she said, "Be it done unto me according to your word," it was not a sentence of resignation, it was a declaration of love. So we begin this morning with gratitude, knowing that God invites us into the same closeness that Jesus offered His disciples. We come with open hearts, ready to place every intention, fear, and hope into the hands of the one who guides our every step. We come united with the whole church, remembering the holy souls in purgatory, asking God's mercy to embrace them, and trusting that every prayer we offer rises like incense before His throne. We come as one family, those who are new to prayer, those who pray daily, those who are returning after a long time, and those who simply long for peace. And as we settle into this sacred moment, we acknowledge the presence of every person gathered here in spirit. Whether you are listening from a busy home, a quiet room, a workplace, or a place of solitude, God sees you. He hears your unspoken needs. He knows the burdens you carry. You are not praying alone. You are surrounded by a family of believers lifting one another in charity and intercession. Every comment written, every intention shared, every heart quietly asking for help becomes part of a single prayer rising to heaven. So breathe deeply. Allow your soul to rest. Let this morning become a doorway into grace. Let obedience become not a struggle, but a surrender, not an obligation, but an embrace. God's will is not a heavy weight. His will is the path to the life you have been longing for. As the day unfolds, let this moment anchor your spirit in truth. You are loved, you are guided, you are chosen, and you are invited to walk in the peace of Christ. There is a quiet strength that begins to rise in the soul when prayer continues beyond the first moment of reflection. As the morning opens further and the world grows louder, something within you longs to keep that stillness alive. It becomes a shelter, a steady flame that refuses to be extinguished by the demands of the day. When you choose to remain with God a little longer, to listen a little deeper, you begin to notice that obedience is not an isolated act, but a relationship. It is the steady unfolding of trust, formed slowly, shaped patiently, as God draws you closer to His heart with every whispered invitation. In this unfolding, your life becomes a meeting place between heaven and earth. You start to see that every action, every decision, every word can be offered to God. Even the ordinary becomes sacred when done with intention. You may not realize how deeply God works in the hidden corners of your daily life, but each quiet act of faithfulness, each small surrender, becomes a seed of holiness that only grows stronger over time. This is why Jesus pointed to His disciples and called them His family. They were not perfect. They struggled, doubted, misunderstood, but they showed up, they listened, they trusted. Their yes was imperfect, yet sincere. And perhaps this is the most comforting truth of all. God does not seek perfection in you. He seeks willingness. Mary's life echoes that same truth. She did not know everything God would ask of her, yet her heart remained steady. Her surrender in that early moment of annunciation continued into every season, into joy and into sorrow, into clarity and into confusion, into moments where she felt God's presence and moments where His plan seemed hidden. Obedience was not a single act, it was a lifelong pilgrimage. And in your own way, you walk a similar path. You may not always understand what God is shaping in your life, but when you allow Him to lead, your steps move in rhythm with grace. As you pray this morning, the intentions on your heart rise before God like candles lit in a quiet chapel. Some intentions are heavy with urgency, some are wrapped in worry, others are filled with gratitude and hope, and still others remain too deep for words, burdens that press silently on your soul, longings that you have carried alone. But here, in this sacred moment, you do not have to hold them alone. One by one, you can release them into God's hands. His mercy is not limited. His compassion does not run out. What weighs you down does not overwhelm Him. In this time of prayer, we also remember the holy souls in purgatory, those beloved ones who have gone before us, who wait in hope for the fullness of God's presence. Every whispered prayer, every small sacrifice offered for them becomes a ray of light in the place where they long for completion. The mercy of God reaches them through our love, and as we lift them up, we are reminded that we belong to a communion far greater than what we see on earth. This unity stretches across time, across lives, across eternity itself. And so, as the prayer continues, your heart begins to breathe with a different rhythm. The concerns you carried into this moment may still be present, but their weight begins to shift. You feel the nearness of God in new ways, in the peace settling around your thoughts, in the quiet courage you didn't realize you had, in the sense that you are not alone in the challenges ahead. God is not distant. He is not waiting at the end of your struggle. He is walking with you through it. The longer you pray, the more clearly you sense that obedience is not blind. It is illuminated by love. God's will is not something you fear. It is something you grow to desire because it aligns you with His purpose. And in that purpose, your life finds meaning, direction, and sacred depth. Even when the day becomes complicated, even when distractions rise like storms, your heart can return to this anchor. You can whisper, "Lord, guide me," and grace will meet you exactly where you are. So let this moment shape the rest of your morning. Let the grace you receive now steady your thoughts, words, and actions. Let the presence of God fill the spaces where anxiety once lived. You do not walk into the day empty-handed. You carry mercy, you carry strength, You carry the quiet confidence that obedience is simply the pathway to peace. As the morning deepens and the flow of prayer continues, something begins to shift inside you. What first felt like a gentle invitation now becomes a clearer calling, a drawing forth from the depths of your soul. You recognize that God is not asking merely for words or proximity. He is inviting you into communion. In this sacred unfolding, the heart begins to awaken to truths that are easily forgotten in the noise of daily life. That obedience is an act of love, that surrender is a path to freedom, and that living according to God's will is not a burden, but a liberation. And here in this expanding stillness, the presence of God becomes less a concept and more a lived reality, something tangible in the quiet beating of your heart. You begin to notice how your thoughts soften, how your desires realign, how the anxieties that once clung to your spirit lose some of their power. In prayer, God gently reveals the places where you have been holding on too tightly, your fears, your expectations, your attempts to control outcomes that were never meant to rest on your shoulders. Some burdens you've carried for years without realizing how heavily they pressed against your soul. Others are fresh, born of recent disappointments or uncertainties, yet all of them, no matter their shape or age, begin to loosen in the warmth of His mercy. You recall that obedience is not a demand but an embrace. It is not God forcing your hand, but God extending His hand. He calls not to limit you, but to lead you into a fullness that far exceeds what you could create for yourself. And when you surrender, truly surrender, something profound awakens. You discover strength where you expected weakness, clarity where you anticipated confusion, and peace where you once feared chaos. This is the paradox of divine love, that what you let go of returns transformed, and what you give to God is never lost. As you reflect on this truth, Mary's example returns once more with radiant clarity. Her obedience was not passive nor blind. It was active, intelligent, and rooted in faith. She did not say yes because she understood. She said yes because she trusted the one who asked. And as she walked her path, from the quiet temple halls of her childhood to the rugged roads of Nazareth, from the wonder of Bethlehem to the sorrow of Calvary, her obedience grew stronger, not weaker. Every step was a dialogue between her heart and the heart of God. She teaches you that obedience is not a momentary act, but a lifelong companionship with grace. As your prayer deepens, you also begin to feel a growing sensitivity to the needs of others. Prayer has a way of expanding the heart, making room for compassion where fear once lived. When you pray for the holy souls in purgatory, you sense the vastness of God's mercy stretching across eternity. These souls who once walked the earth as we do now are held in a purification of love, longing for the full presence of God. Your intercession becomes a bridge of charity, a spiritual gift that flows from one life to another, and you realize that in God's family, no soul is forgotten, no cry unheard, no suffering overlooked. This awareness extends to the living as well. You begin to think of those who are burdened today, those who sit in the hospital rooms waiting for healing, those who stand beside loved ones in their final hours, those who wake with anxiety, those who struggle silently with grief or loneliness. Your heart becomes aware of expectant mothers who carry both life and fear, of elderly parents who feel forgotten, of children who long for protection and belonging. Suddenly, prayer becomes more than requests. It becomes participation in God's compassion. You feel a desire not only to ask for blessings, but to become a blessing. You recall the prayer for families, the entrusting of loved ones to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. In this moment, you lift each person, spoken or unspoken, that rests heavily on your spirit. You imagine their names rising to God like incense, carried by angels into the heart of divine mercy. Whether they are near or far, struggling or at peace, you place them into the hands that formed all things, trusting that God can reach them in ways you never could. This is obedience too, allowing God to care for those you love instead of trying to bear the weight alone. Then your heart returns to your own walk with God. and you consider how obedience shapes your daily life. It is easy to imagine obedience as a grand gesture, yet in truth, it most often unfolds in the quiet decisions made throughout the day. It looks like forgiving when your pride begs you to hold resentment. It looks like choosing patience instead of anger, honesty instead of convenience, compassion instead of judgment. It looks like stepping away from what harms your soul, even when part of you wants to hold on. It looks like praying when you feel spiritually dry, trusting when you feel confused, and continuing to walk forward even when you cannot see the full path ahead. Obedience also reveals itself in how you respond to suffering. It does not mean pretending everything is easy, nor does it mean denying your feelings. Rather, obedience invites you to hand your suffering to the one who endured suffering for your sake. Jesus does not ask you to carry your cross alone. He walks with you, strengthens you, and transforms your pain into something redemptive. And when you trust Him in the midst of hardship, your faith becomes radiant. It becomes a testimony to others that God is not only present in victories, but also in the valleys. As your prayer continues to unfold, you begin to feel a longing for renewal, a desire to live differently today than you did yesterday. You feel God inviting you to recommit yourself to holiness, not through grand resolutions, but through daily faithfulness. You sense a call to be more attentive to His voice, more generous with your love, more intentional with your time. You remember the act of faith, the act of hope, and the act of charity, prayers that shape the foundation of the Christian life. They remind you that faith is not merely belief, but trust, that hope is not wishful thinking, but confident expectation, and that charity is not sentimentality, but self-giving love. With each passing moment, your heart feels more aligned with God's presence. You whisper silent promises to live with greater purpose, to avoid the sins that once entangled you, to guard your words and actions, to seek the good, the true, and the beautiful in all things. You feel the Holy Spirit's gentle prompting, guiding you toward the person you are called to become. This is the gift of prayer. It reshapes the soul. And as you rest in this sacred quiet, you know deep within that God is preparing you for the day ahead, not to face it alone, but to walk through it with Him, not to fear what comes, but to meet it with grace, not to hide from challenges, but to approach them with the strength born of obedience. You feel steadier now, stronger, calmer, more aware of God's nearness. You know that whatever waits beyond this moment, you will not face it as the person you were when you first began to pray. You have been softened, strengthened, renewed. And in this stillness, you realize that obedience is not the end of prayer. It is the fruit of prayer. It is the way you carry this sacred encounter into the world. As the final movement of this morning prayer unfolds, the stillness that has been growing within you begins to settle into a deeper clarity. You sense that God has been gently guiding you from the first moment you opened your heart, leading you through reflection, surrender, and renewal. And now, as the prayer nears its close, your soul feels fuller, steadier, and more awake to the presence of the one who walks beside you in every hour of the day. What began as a simple act of obedience, to pause, to pray, to listen, has blossomed into a profound encounter with grace. You realize now how easily the world can pull your attention away from what truly matters. The demands of the day, the expectations of others, the noise of responsibilities, all of these create currents that push against your spirit. But in this sacred space of prayer, God reorders your priorities. He places your heart back into alignment with His own. The clarity you feel is not the result of your own effort. It is the result of letting yourself be held by the one who knows you completely. In this clarity, you begin to sense with new depth what it means to belong to God's family, just as Jesus taught in Matthew's Gospel. When He stretched out His hand toward His disciples and called them His mother and brothers, He was revealing a truth that reaches across centuries and touches you now. Obedience draws you into intimacy with Christ. You are not a distant follower. You are not an outsider. You are a beloved member of His family, grafted into a relationship that cannot be taken from you. This belonging offers a kind of security that nothing in the world can replicate. You also feel more deeply connected to the communion of saints, to Mary, whose quiet yes still echoes through time, to the holy souls who await the fullness of God's light, to the faithful who walk this same path of trust across every nation and culture. You recognize that your prayer today has not been solitary but communal. In heaven and on earth, countless hearts have joined with yours in worship, intercession, and surrender. This unity is a gift of immeasurable depth, a reminder that you never walk your journey alone. And as your heart becomes more aware of this great communion, compassion rises once more. You lift up those who struggle to find hope, those weighed down by illness or grief, those lost in confusion or fear. You pray for families divided by conflict, for relationships strained by misunderstanding, for individuals who feel unseen or unloved. You think of the lonely, the forgotten, the ones who carry silent burdens no one else notices. You entrust them all to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, knowing that He sees, He understands, and He never abandons His people. The more you pray for others, the more your own perspective begins to shift. You see your day differently now, not as a sequence of tasks to endure, but as a mission to live with intention and grace. You carry within you a renewed desire to be patient with those who frustrate you, gentle with those who test you, compassionate with those who need encouragement. You feel drawn to forgive more quickly, to speak words that heal rather than harm, to show kindness even when it is not returned. Prayer has reshaped your vision of what holiness looks like in the ordinary. It is found in the quiet choices, the hidden sacrifices, the small acts of love that no one sees but God. You also feel a growing resolve to keep your heart guarded and anchored. You know temptations will come, old habits will attempt to resurface, doubts may whisper again. Yet the strength you feel now is not fragile. It is a strength rooted in God's presence, formed through prayer, nourished by grace. You can walk into the day without fear because the one who began this work in you will continue it. You will stumble, but you will not fall alone. You will struggle, but you will be upheld. God's faithfulness is the foundation beneath your every step. As this final moment of prayer draws to a close, you sit quietly and breathe in one last time the peace that surrounds you. You thank God for His mercy, His patience, His nearness. You thank Him for speaking to your heart, for softening what was hardened, for illuminating what was hidden, for strengthening what was weak. You thank Him for reminding you that obedience is not a weight, but a pathway into His love. And then gently, you feel the prayer come to rest. It does not end, it simply shifts. The stillness you found here becomes a seed you now carry into the world. You rise from this moment with renewed purpose, knowing that the day ahead will unfold under God's guiding hand. You know that even when challenges arise, you can return to the stillness within and find Him waiting. May this morning prayer remind you that you are chosen, cherished, and called to walk in trust. May the grace you receive today accompany you through every hour, and may your life reflect the beauty of a heart obedient to God. If this prayer has touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, subscribe for more daily prayers, and comment your intentions below so our community can lift you up in love and intercession.